They were mostly ambitious and super hardworking, slanted heavily in the cluster B direction. Cluster B meaning DSM-5 personality disorders, specifically the power-seeking one. If you don't have something psychologically wrong with you, for the most part, those are really miserable lives. To be continuously engaging with people that are you over and stab you in the back and lie to you so that you can just get more power that doesn't equate to meaningful quality of life, and have no real relationships because the only people that are interacting with you want something from you. There has to be something mostly psychologically wrong with you to want to gain a lot of power. So the psychological dispositions that are power seeking, we call it sociopathy, psychopathy, narcissism, tend to be willing to put up with the difficulties and do the fucked up things necessary to win a lot of win-lose games and get to the top of the power law distribution of power systems.
How do you think you become super successful? You think these people, I mean, look, I've met these people. You think these people are normal? Do you think they're like, ho hum, whole, let's be friends and have a burger? That's not what these people are. They're deeply, profoundly insecure. They manifest a lot of that by their need to find something that they can latch onto that makes them feel less inferior, i.e. superior. And the success tends to be proportional to that feeling. Like whenever you meet somebody who's like, I'm a teacher and I'm really happy, that person is whole. That's what it means. And when you meet like a super billionaire who's like trying to become a super bega billionaire, they're super insecure.
And sometimes you actually need to not have complex thought so that you can avoid looking at the externalities you're causing and that you can give plausible deniability even to yourself to be able to just execute on some simple things, which is usually where more power comes from. So then I see people who care more and have more complex thinking not want to do things that will cause lots of externalities and think about what the quality of life in their short period of time being alive is, and not necessarily want to be engaged in those types of financial warfare and political warfare and whatever all the time. And so they just don't ever get much power, which also means they don't influence things very much. There's a systemic disposition that makes sociopaths and their like mostly run the world. Until we actually fix that, we are just on movement towards self-induced termination. I had a conversation several years ago with one of the most powerful, evil power brokers in the world. The way he framed it goes like this. I'll just do it briefly because it's important. Humans are animals. Animals are either predators or prey. Predators don't feel bad when they kill prey. If you feel bad when the prey humans die, it's because you're a prey human and you won't run the world. The apex predator will run the world. They will be the thing that determines the shape of an overall ecosystem. And whether you like what apex predators do or not doesn't matter at all to the fact that apex predators will be the ones who run the world. So the only question is whether you have what it takes to make it into that group or not. Power in the form of predatory power is inexorable. Can't do anything about it. It's always going to win. Well, if that's the case, and I can't effectively fight against it, that just binds all kinds of moral possibilities as just stupid and naive. So then the next part was power as virtue. He said, and it's actually good that the apex predators are the ones who run the world because they're the ones who are steely-eyed and real and grounded enough to understand how shit works. And the world is actually kind of brutal, and people who just don't get how it fucking works can't guide stuff. They'll make it worse. Sometimes you got to put a head on a spike in the yard to keep everybody else from being out. And so it goes from power as inexorable to power as virtue. And then some people stop there. And then the last step is feeling good about exercising your own power over because it says you are part of that class, which becomes power as fetish, which is the movement from sociopathy to sadism, when you actually fetishize the exercising of it. Now, of course, everything he was saying was utter gibberish. And I didn't bring it up with him because I knew that wasn't relevant in that moment. I was basically getting more information. A blue whale is neither predator nor prey in a traditional sense. Neither is an elephant. The apex predator is lower on the food chain than a virus or a parasite or a mosquito in many ways. You're pretending that there's this thing that isn't really there. You are not acknowledging that the arms race that has always won self-terminates pretty soon. because when you exponentiate externalization and war, it actually destroys everything. And so basically it's gibberish, but it's compelling enough gibberish that if you kind of want to do it anyways, it's plausible deniability. What Robert Greene did in the 48 Laws of Power did the same move. These types of power dynamics are inexorable. If you don't know who the sucker in the room is, it's you. If you don't think these games are at play, either you're stupid or you actually do know they're at play and you're signaling naivete as a power trick itself, or ignorance signaling or virtue signaling as a method of power. So that was the power as inexorable. And then the power as virtue is, since this is the only way to be effective at getting anything done, if you have any ethic or moral or scruple at all, you better become excellent at this game of power so you have a chance to affect the things you care about. It basically tried to take whatever ethical immune system people had that would resist illegitimate evil applications of power and say that's not possible, and then actually hook it into those evil applications of power are the only ethical thing, which is basically trying to turn an immune system into an autoimmune disease. Some viruses and bacteria do exactly that thing, right? That's what's happening.
This is a super important concept to understand, which is, like, I was always dumbfounded. Evolution of religions. You take Christianity, for instance, and you say, okay, so Jesus, when they brought Mary Magdalene, said, let he who has no sins amongst you cast the first stone, right? And then when they're nailing him up, he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And he's like bringing forgiveness to Judaism. And in his name, we did the Crusades and the Inquisition and said, we will not just kill, but torture anyone who doesn't accept the Lord of Peace as their... Like, how the fuck did we do that? How did we do the mental gymnastics to take the guy whose key teachings were forgiveness and torture people in the name of that? Well, we figured out how to do it, right? But the key is it was super adaptive. So you've got an idea, right? Say you've got Jesus' teachings, or we can take it in any of them. And then there's going to be a bunch of mutations on that idea, different interpretations of it. Some of the mutations say, be quiet and don't push your ideas on anyone, like, be contemplative and, etc. And those ones don't catch on because they aren't being intentionally propagated. And other ones say, go out and propagate these ideas on missions and on crusades and focus on not the forgiveness parts, but on the like wrath and Leviticus and who God's enemies were, like focus on those parts. And that you actually get better spots in heaven for converting more people, right? And so what you end up getting is that the ideas that catch on are the ones that win in narrative warfare. But they're having to catch on, so then say Islam is also competing for some of the same people, right? Because ultimately the religions become the bases of in-groups that are competing against out-groups for fundamentally political and economic and survival type bases. So I can hold people together with a political left or political right ideology, or a capitalist communist ideology, or a racial identity ideology, or religious ideologies. All of those become the basis of an in-group that can bind together to be more successful in competition.